This episode of What the Tech is brought to you by Audioblocks.com. Stop overpaying for audio media that's underwhelming. Audioblocks is an affordable subscription-based site that gives you unlimited downloads to over 100,000 stock sounds, sound effects, loops, production music, and more. Get your 7-day free trial at audioblocks.com/promo/whatthetech.
What the tech?
Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarin. Of course, I'm joined by a returning Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
Pretty good.
Back in the States. You're no longer in Lyon.
Again.
How's the adjustment for you? Like, you were away for like almost a month, and now you're like, oh, I'm back in my office.
Yep. It's very natural to be here. No, the weird thing is funny. I was just talking to Mary Jo and Leo about this yesterday, and actually it happened to me this morning at about 4 a.m., which is you wake up in the middle of the night like that, and you think you're in another bed somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
And
That's every day for me. It's a nightmare.
Yeah. So it's disconcerting. And in this case, like I didn't do this last night, and I hopefully won't, but I actually, some number 2 or 3 years ago or something, jumped out of the bed, walked toward where the bathroom would be in the other place, which is the opposite direction from my house, and then like walked into my dresser, and then kind of stood there in the dark, like looking around, thinking like, what, what am I doing? So there's that kind of weird, you know.
But I mean, you're glad that you're back home and things are starting to go back to normal, right? Because you missed, I mean, the whole, you know, I don't know if you had internet where you were, but Windows 7 happened.
Yes.
Windows 10 happened. Sorry.
Yeah.
Windows 7 is happening, and
listen. We had a great time, and I'm glad we went to Lyon, and the house that we swapped with was great. Those people were really nice. I mean, if I could do this all over again,
they were very upset at me.
Yeah. Oh, I should tell you, actually, since we're on that topic, he actually did leave out some of my Def Leppard CDs.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which were like buried in a box in the cellar.
So for people who don't remember last week, Paul was at the house share, the house swap that you were doing, and you were in this beautiful room filled with, I mean, just thousands of records.
Yeah.
Every kind of record. And I told Paul to just take all of them, just misplace all of them, just like randomly take them out, put them all over. I guess the person who that belongs to was listening, and he tweeted me, and he told me that he's going to take your Def Leppard CD albums and just scatter them around, which he did. That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Yeah. No, I would never. I mean, I would never mess with his stuff, obviously. So that was nice. But you know, the timing of this was so awful, and you know, I wanted to get the book out before I left, and wasn't able to. I figured, well, I'll be able to get it out while I'm there, and wasn't able to. And it was just very stressful from sort of a work perspective. And normally,
because even though you're there, right? Like even though you still have internet and you're connected, it almost feels like you're missing something by not being in your regular chair.
There's been we've been doing this for a long time, right? So we have established a schedule, and it's kind of always worked out for the most part. And I before I left, you know, I'm with new people now, a new company and everything. So I wrote everyone and said, look, you guys probably don't understand what this is like, but I mean, I'm not going on vacation. I'll be working every day. I'm going to be off schedule because I'm 6 hours ahead. And I don't know if it's just the general thing with Windows 10 happening, or my kids are just getting older, and so they're less inclined to do things on a certain schedule or whatever. But we really didn't keep to the schedule that I have always, or for the most part, kept to. And the other thing is, you know, the last 2 years, I actually took a week off. Like I keep having to explain to people, you know, this trip's not a vacation. I can't be gone for 3 weeks and do nothing. And so I'm just living in a different home. We do stuff every day, but I typically work. And then, the last 2 years I've taken about a week off, not quite a week, but
I mean,
say the
do you
5
treat
days.
it like, just like if you were at home, you'd be doing, whatever you're doing till like 6 o'clock, and then after 6, you go out to dinner or whatever, or like the
Except
weekends.
because of the time change, it's a different schedule. So I would get up in the morning, do a couple hours work, catch up on email, write a couple of quick things, whatever. Head out by late morning at the latest, and be back by 3 o'clock, because 3 o'clock in France is 9 a.m. in the United States, from in Boston. And that was always a really neat schedule, and it really just didn't work out. I mean, my son, who is 17 now, if we let him, and we did a couple of times, he could sleep until noon.
Yeah.
And so, because he's a teenager, and that's kind of what they need. And I don't want to be a jerk about it, but at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, it's like, you're kind of cutting into my day now, And the other thing is, my kids are old enough that they can stay home. And so in a place like Lyon, where maybe there aren't, Lyon is a beautiful city, but it's a beautiful city for adults mostly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like Paris, where there are, 2,000 different sites and, crazy things to do. Maybe every other day we could leave the kids home, and my wife and I would just go out for a couple hours, have lunch out or something, go out by ourselves. And it's fine. It's just, but it was weird that it just kind of turned into kind of a different thing. And I was, just stressed from the window stuff. It was just too much,
It's too much.
And
I couldn't take
no,
it.
I mean, I really wish.
No, it has to be overwhelming for you, because I mean, this is what you do, right?
I can't disappear when a new version of Windows comes out.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Windows 10's here. See you later, guys. It doesn't. I can't.
Or that was strategic, and you're like, oh, hell with this thing. I don't want to deal with the backlash of this.
No.
See you guys
if I had
later.
known, by the way, if I mean this, if I had known July 29th was the date, we would not have gone away when we did. I would have changed it. We wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And it was October. It was always going to be October. They changed it very late in the game. We had bought our tickets at great expense, by the way, the most expensive plane tickets we've ever purchased. The other family had purchased their tickets, of course, and that's their schedule. We can't change that. And, we had to go. So we did. But, man, if I could do that one over again.
You would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would.
Well,
I'd go now.
Yeah, right now would be a great time. We have so much to talk about. We didn't get a chance last week to talk about Google and the restructuring there. They've announced a router, which we should talk about. Before we do, I want to talk about our sponsor. It's a new sponsor to the show. We spoke about them once before, and I got a lot of positive feedback from podcasters, out of all people, podcasters and media creators online. When you put something up on YouTube nowadays, it's not like how it was a couple years ago, where you can put up anything and everything and just hope for the best, and it doesn't get tagged as a copyright violation. Well, nowadays, everything gets tagged as a copyright violation. I got tagged, Paul, for putting my own personal video, and I had the TV on in the background. The TV,
Nice.
I think it was CNN or the news was on, and I got tagged by a copyright, and I had to pull my video down. And Canada,
What does that mean, though? Tagged by YouTube? Tagged by...
it said, so-and-so claimed that there's copywritten content on your video. So it's automated. They listen back to it, and they hear something that was submitted.
Yep.
And that's it. That's all it is. And what am I going to say? Like, you dispute it. People are getting tagged for bird sounds outside. I mean, it's crazy sometimes how this works. But if you're a podcaster...
Yeah, the birds in my neighborhood would do that.
Yeah, the ones in Boston.
Those bastards.
Those birds. But if you're a podcast creator or content creator, look into this website, audioblocks.com/promo/whatthetech. You get a 7-day free trial with this. And the way that this works, you don't have to overpay for audio that exists, copyright free, fair use audio. AudioBlocks is an affordable subscription-based site that gives you unlimited downloads to over 100,000 stock sounds, sound effects, loops, production music, and more. Even with sound effects, for example, the Ball Truth, the intro that was produced for them by an engineer at Westwood One, used the safest of the safest audio clips. And 10 years, he's been using it. Just last year, every one of our videos got hit with a copyright tag for a sound effect, not even anything. It's a sound effect that says, "from Los Angeles." So you have to play it safe nowadays. With audioblocks.com, you're playing it safe because it's fair use. It's unrestricted usage for personal and commercial projects. Keep what you have, keep what you download, and maintain usage rights forever. So you never have to worry about something like this happening. audioblocks.com/promo/whatthetech. I'm talking about podcasting today, but it's generally for anything. If you are creating a home video and you need, some sort of sound effects that you want to be able to use, if you're creating content, video reviews, product reviews, again, podcast, video, audio, check them out. audioblocks.com/promo/whatthetech. I really enjoy talking about this because I deal with issues like this on a regular basis. And, the one-time podcaster may not experience it, but I know many, many people that listen to the show that are dedicated hardcore podcasters. And some big deal podcasters out there. I'm going to pat myself on the back that these guys are listening to me, and I appreciate it. But you should check these guys out because you don't want episodes getting pulled. You lose money when you do that. It becomes a hassle for you. You don't want the strike. So audioblocks.com/promo/whatthetech. You get a 7-day free trial when you sign up. I want to thank them for supporting, of course, What the Tech and, of course, the GFQ network. I'm going to pat myself on the back on that live read, Paul.
It was nicely done, sir.
Thank you. You know what it is when you've experienced it and you're passionate about a problem like this.
Yep.
Because it drives me crazy. I mean, I just had stuff. It was a home video that got pulled. Copyright. Sorry, CNN.
Sorry, I watch you.
Yeah, your
jerks.
crappy news organization. You know what? That is my punishment for having them on all day. That's what happens. Let's talk about Google. Major restructuring happening at Google. Google will now, the parent company is now called Alphabet. What do you think of the name, Paul?
I think it's terrible. And I think it's stupid. It's so stupid.
Yeah. By the way, before I forget, I apologize for cutting you, Paul. Starting next week, drumroll, please, we will have an ad-free stream. I know people go crazy with the ads that we have on Ustream. We have no control over those. That's what the company puts. We're going with an ad-free model for the live stream. And it's going to be provided by Livestream, actually. I got this fun little box here. Where is it? This little thing right here is going to control the ad-free stream. So starting next week, no more ads to interrupt my ads. You'll just have one at a time.
Just me.
Just me, guys. I know a lot of the live viewers are going to be happy over that. So the name is a little stupid. It almost sounds like it's like, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to buy every company to fit a letter. And no matter how
except
stupid
that they already have
is,
multiple companies with the same letter.
They do. So are they going to rename?
No, I don't think the point is to have 26 different companies.
But why now? I mean, it is interesting though because Google. I mean, and for all fairness, Google is just a property of theirs at this point. They have Android, which is a Google property, but
you know what? Yeah,
is this them securing their future? Where the Google model, Google is their browser, is their web page, and their ad model is coming through there. That's how they generate a lot of their income. Is this their way of saying, listen, Google is just going to become a small part of our business, and it's going to be all these things?
Well, I mean, first of all, Google is still going to be 99% of their business, right? I mean, the interesting thing about this is that, well, actually, it's not even as simple. Google is such a weird and quirky company, right? That this kind of, if any other company had done this, it would have made zero sense. When Google does it, like, well, okay, they're weird, right? And I think a lot of this is part of what I think of as the cult of the co-founders, right? Sergey Brin and Larry Page. So they're quirky guys, and they're interested in different things, like really different things. They're interested in spaceships and flying cars and self-driving cars, and they're interested in the human genome and whatever. And like they're like big thinkers. And I think the day-to-day stuff at Google is not of much interest to them. In fact, I think the whole way they did their IPO, the way they created their initial corporate structure, the way they've redone it here has all been based in this notion of these guys not wanting to do things the normal kind of traditional
way,
right?
Yeah.
Not interested. And it's going to be a sad day for Google in some ways when these guys leave. And technically, they just did.
Yeah.
Which I actually think is what this is about.
I mean,
if Larry Page and Sergey Brin had stepped down from Google, it would have destroyed the stock, at least temporarily. It would have been a huge problem. But I think by doing it this way, You get to keep these guys associated with the company, which now has a different name, even though they're really off doing other things. The guy who's running Google now is the right guy to run Google, and Google now being that part of Google that we collectively, people who are on this podcast or listening to this podcast, care about. You know, the technology part for the most part, although oddly some of it is still separate.
Okay, so can I do a comparison to Microsoft here? Is Alphabet equal to Microsoft and Google's equivalent to Windows? It's just a property of theirs.
Yeah, right. So yes,
that generates a lot of money, obviously. You know.
Yeah, the difference is that Microsoft is one company that has business units, and Google is now a holding. Oh, no, Alphabet is now a holding company that has multiple companies. Yeah. And so I think there's a part of this is a desire to appease to shareholders and to investors who the Google founders, from what I can tell, could not care less about, but have legal requirements too, where they can separate themselves from Google without actually leaving the company. They can put the right people in place to run each of the companies, which already makes plenty of sense. You know, the guy who ran Nest runs Nest. You know, the guy who should be running Google is running Google, et cetera. And the Google is no longer weighed down by these other smaller companies that are never going to make any money, even though the profits from Google are still going to be used to prop them up. But this gives, I think, will give those investors the transparency they want so that they can feel good about Google as an ongoing enterprise.
So, you know, obviously this is future-proofing the company in a weird way, but what's going to be considered a Google property and what's going to be considered a independent company? Like, for example, YouTube. Is YouTube going to be considered under the Alphabet holding brand, or is it still going to be Google?
No, I think it's still part of Google.
It's still part of Google, because the ads are being generated via Google.
I'm actually, I don't have a 100% firm grasp on what's where. Some of the obvious stuff is all together, you know, Gmail and Chrome and all that stuff. Android is all together. It's all technology stuff. Yeah. But it's also all together with the ads, which, you know, is technology stuff, but not really. But the ads obviously play a big part in the other stuff that they do, including Yahoo. Well, I believe, I could be wrong here, but I believe that the Nexus hardware stuff still falls under Google.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
But Nest doesn't. And it seemed like when they bought Nest that one of the things they would do would integrate these things together and have them be part of a cohesive family of products. But no, I guess one of the deals with Nest is sort of like Skype at Microsoft, was that they have their own unique culture. They have their own unique way of doing things. They never switched over to any kind of Google infrastructure. They're still basically operated as a standalone company. So they get to go off and be their own thing. I mean,
there's a lot of companies like, Nest is a known one, right? Like that Nest is something that we know, but there's a ton of companies that Google has acquired that we don't really know of. You know, they just they bought this company and that company, and we don't know what's going to happen to them.
Right.
They bought I think it was Grand Central or Grand Central a couple years ago. They turned it into Google Voice. Yeah.
Which, by the way, now is, they have these efforts that are, technology related, like Google Fiber, Google Wi-Fi. Is that the right term for it? Google Fi, I guess.
Yeah.
The Wi-Fi service. And that, in some ways, supersedes Google Voice, right? Because it's a phone service, and I guess if you have a Google Voice going into Fi, that's a little bit of a problem. And so there's a lot of stuff to sort of rectify, and it's not very clear where things are going to fall.
By the way, Google Voice no longer works with my phone. Since going to my Samsung, it doesn't work at all. I can't get it to use the voicemails, on its own. I have to do some crazy finagling of getting it to work. But it is interesting that this is the new company now. You know, Alphabet will be the holding company, and all these other companies are going to trickle down. And the way that I see this is that they are trying to protect themselves for the day that Google ads do not generate the revenue that they are generating now.
Well,
because if your main business starts falling apart, no matter how successful your secondary and third and fourth business plan is.
Yeah. So that hasn't happened.
And it won't happen. It won't happen for a long time.
I don't know. So actually, I do find it interesting that Google has exactly the same problem as Microsoft, which is that as people move to using mobile devices more and more and PCs less, the way that they make money is disappearing because they're not successful in mobile in the sense that the way they make money is from ads, and mobile ads are not successful for them. So this is going to require some restructuring on their part. And it's interesting because this is a chance for someone to come along and disrupt this. If Apple or some other company figures out how to monetize, I just said, of course, Apple has figured out how to monetize mobile devices, so that's a ludicrous statement. But it figures out some kind of a replacement for mobile apps, or mobile ads. Google could be sunk.
Yeah.
In that sense.
No, I mean,
in the same way that if the world changes to tablets and smartphones, Windows could be sunk.
Yeah. Well, it's a changing world, and it's at least it's a positive to see that they're trying to adapt and they're trying to guess what the next step is. I mean, they have all these crazy projects like Project Loon and all these
nuts.
things. Yeah, like all these crazy.
But that stuff shouldn't be attached to Google, right?
It shouldn't. No, I mean, they're electric car. They have
a search engine company, a Gmail company, an Android company, whatever.
20 years ago, Paul, if someone told you that Alta Vista was going to get into the car business, what would that mean to you?
You know what, though? So there are things that are equally weird. I mean, there were toy companies like Mattel and Coleco that got into the video game console market in the 1980s. Imagine if those things had, and then they made computers. The computers never sold well, but imagine if they had. Imagine if the number one and two selling computer today was like a Coleco something and a Mattel something. Like how weird that would be. But what was the origin of a company like Sony or a company like Nintendo? They weren't technology companies when they came of age in the early 1900s. I'm not sure of the exact history of each, but to those people of that day, if you had said, by the way, 100 years from now, you're going to be a leading technology firm and selling semiconductor-based, products around. They wouldn't even know what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So I mean, things change. Sony sells. Actually, one of Sony's most profitable businesses is a life insurance company that exists only in Asia.
Yeah, and that's amazing. I mean,
it's weird.
That is really weird. So Sony's like a holding company also.
Samsung sells washing machines, and refrigerators
and dishwashers and.
Yeah, and I'm sure they have confusing UIs and are terrible to use. But
Mitsubishi makes cars and TVs.
That's right. Yeah.
And did they still make TVs? And heavy duty. I worked for a Japanese company for a while, and this company made staplers, and they made like really expensive construction equipment
Sure.
and staplers.
Yeah.
So you would have it wasn't
kind of the
separate.
same thing. It's just a different scale.
Yeah, but they didn't even try to separate the business.
Oh, I see.
It was like you would have a catalog, and then like people would call, and like you would either take orders for heavy duty rebarring tools, like rebarring equipment, or like a box, like a dozen
staple refills.
Yeah, like a staple refills. But the value in the company is that they had like some patent on the mechanism of how the stapler goes. It was like this super smooth. It was like the Cadillac of staplers.
Right.
And that was their big thing. And then heavy duty construction equipment, which is insane. So, I mean, but look at Google, right? They're a search engine. They are a phone company. Now they're making routers.
Well, I mean,
talking about the router. What do you think of this?
In some ways, this is not much different than guy becomes rich somehow, maybe in technology like Mark Cuban or Paul Allen, and then they own a sports team, right? And now these guys are kind of famous, especially Mark Cuban, out in the normal world. And nobody who knows who Mark Cuban is, for the most part, understands where he came from. They just think of him as the guy who's on TV or the guy who owns the Dallas Mavericks, when in fact he came from the technology startup world and just cashed in and made a lot of money. And I get, companies can do this too, I guess, when you have enough money. I mean, Apple is a company that is almost literally been proven to be working on driverless cars. I think a lot of people would, it's not hard to look at Apple and say, wow, I'd like to see their design sensibilities applied to whatever.
Yeah.
Home appliances, automobiles, airplanes, boats. Although the Steve Jobs vote was terrible, by the way, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting how technology has kind of become the driving force rather than it being, like a GE, for example, General Electric, right? How many properties does GE hold?
Right.
I mean,
actually, GE is probably the most obvious comparison to the new. Yeah.
And now, it's a very different world we're in. this OnHub got announced. OnHub got announced yesterday or the day before. And it's funny because I was just talking to Spencer about routers. So he bought a new house and he's having a lot of Wi-Fi issues in the house where some areas are dead spots and some are not. So he's like, I just need something I could just plug in and it works. Like it'll know that there's like a Wi-Fi
signal. You want to
signal.
extend it maybe, or
Yeah, he just wants to extend it. So I was looking at like there is some like easy one button extension stuff, but I don't really know like Wi-Fi that way.
Wireless networking is actually really difficult.
It is.
If plugging in a router or having a router, having it give Wi-Fi to the house is actually not too hard. But when you run into situations like what you're talking about, that gets really tricky. I used to use, Apple has like the big routers, but then they have the little portable routers.
Yeah,
and I actually used to use one of those to extend the wireless network through my house. It worked, but man, what a pain in the ass it was to configure. And I think you had to initially plug it in with a wire, kind of bring it over to the part of the house where it was going to be. I forget how. It was very difficult, and it was the type of thing if someone unplugged it, you were like,
over.
It's never going to get it. Yeah, you're never going to get this going again.
It's like when you have to disconnect the battery in your car and all your presets are gone.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was like.
Yeah, it's lost.
Like, can't we create like a little tiny battery in this thing so it retains it for like, I don't know, like the 20 minutes? So OnHub got announced, and this is a weird device. It's kind of competing with Amazon because it's going to have Google Now integration. It's competing with Apple with their Apple routers that they're making. Yeah. You ordered it, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I did, and I don't need it, you know. But I sort of recognize the need for this kind of thing. For example, here's a story for you. God, this is so dumb. When we were in France, right? The first thing we wanted to do was get online there, right? And so what they had was an older Netgear router with a WEP password, which is a combination of letters and numbers. I want to say it was 20 digits. They had written it down on a piece of paper, the password. Now, WEP is an older form of wireless security that's insecure. I mean, anything could break into it. It's like the simplest hack in the world. And we had a really hard time because they're French, so they write differently. So like the 9s look like G's. It wasn't clear if some of the letters were capital or, we spent a long time trying to get just any device for this to work. So I had my kids typing it into different devices. I was, my wife and I were saying it out loud so they could get it quickly. We couldn't get it. And so I walked over to the router, and sure enough, it's like the default thing. It's written on the router. And so we could see where they had made, they didn't make a mistake. We just couldn't read the writing.
Yeah.
But we figured out how to get into it. And then I thought, this is goofy. And we started having, I think the router was old enough that it had like device limits on it. So the first couple got on fine, but then other devices couldn't get online. And then someone would get online and it would bump someone else off. And so I thought, I need to look at this. So we actually spent a lot of time on this while we were there. And I went into their router. By the way, I shouldn't say this on the thing. Let's just say that the default username and password were the username and password, right? So which is really insecure. So it's like WEP, all the password information you need to get into the network is written on the router. And so I was like, okay, first of all, I'm going to fix the security on this WPA2. I'm going to fix it so that all the devices you can go ahead and configure the device access. We're going to do static IPs on devices that can't get on because there were still some. It was really weird. And I'm going to change the name of and while I'm doing all this, I'll just change the name of the network. And I took pictures of everything, and I was going to change it all back, and I was going to leave them a note and say, by the way, you need to fix this because this is not secure.
Yeah.
I completely forgot to do it. And so we're sitting on the plane, literally taxiing, and I was like, and Stephanie's like, what's the matter? And I said, I forgot to change their stuff back. And so she wrote them an email quickly, and I hope they, I don't know, Anyway, they hopefully what they'll do is leave the security where it is and change the name of the the network and the password, whatever. The point of the story, sorry it was so long, is that this stuff is really difficult, even for someone like me, because with my own stuff, you set it up and then you stop thinking about it.
Yeah, you leave it. Yeah.
And confronted by this problem, it really requires like a full stop. It's like your whole world grinds to a halt while you think about this stuff. So when I saw this Google thing, it was very interesting because It was announced just as we got home from this thing, and I was thinking a lot about this wireless networking stuff. And I thought, this is the type of thing like that family should have, that family being just normal people, right? And that's why I think this is interesting. Microsoft tried to do this, by the way, 10 years ago, made beautiful products, 2 generations of them, and then gave up. I don't know why.
Which product was it?
So there was a series of products. So what they had was wireless access points, and then they had wireless cards and adapters for PCs and for laptops. Because if you think back 10 years ago.
Oh, yeah, this is like 10 years ago. Yeah, you're right.
People didn't have wireless capabilities a lot of the time. And so I think the first gen was like 802.11b. It was probably web-based. I don't remember now off the top of my head. And then the second gen was G, right? And they made beautiful hardware. It was super simple to set up, really nicely done, great job. And their excuse at the end of the day, after 2 generations, 2 years of this, was like, you know what, this stuff is starting to become more common in PCs now, and it's getting easier. Obviously D-Link routers were a big deal for a long time, and other companies have routers that are pretty, fairly easy to use. But I look, like I said, the router we have is fine. It's fairly modern. Yeah, I don't think it's ACN. It's probably just N or something. It's fine. It works great. The range is great. Yeah. If you can go to the far corner of my house, you can go outside for a ways and still get Wi-Fi access. But this kind of thing is super. I'm sorry, I'm babbling, but
no, please.
This type of thing is super necessary.
I mean, look at this. This thing looks awesome, though. I mean, the fact that you could log in your phone and it tells you how many devices are connected. You could kind of set. Yeah. Keep an eye on your network. It's doing all the analytics. You could check the network through the app, control it from anywhere. It's a real pain in the butt, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I think it's gotten worse for a lot of people, considering everybody's now doing Netflix streaming and Hulu streaming and all, just apps on these devices.
Right. And you can prioritize.
And you could prioritize, number one, but number two, most people don't have multiple routers set up in their house.
No.
Most normal people have one router. It's probably in their office.
Yeah, they don't have wired Ethernet all over the house.
Nothing is wired.
They get whatever they get from their cable company. They get the piece of crap router that they give you,
and that's all they're doing.
It's configured by the guy in the overalls, and then you never touch it again.
And then you hook up a TV upstairs with Hulu, and you're like, I can't watch this thing. It looks like crap.
Right.
So for a lot of people, this is a major problem right now. Like the way that I've done it is insane. I have all these FiOS routers, and I've set up Mocha bridges, which is like a coax bridge. Yeah, so each of the IPs are like 192.168.2.1, 192.168.3. They all have their own assignment that connects to one network. But the problem with doing this is that Verizon doesn't want you to do this.
No.
So they want you to actually do it a certain different way. So if on their new boxes, their new gateway boxes, they call them, if you shut it off and turn it back on, you lose internet on everything. So the only way to regain internet is to disconnect all of the other ones and then power them on one by one. That's a little nuts.
Yeah.
Now, most people are not going to do that. They're going to either try to get some crappy wireless access point and hope for the best, or they're going to be insane and they're going to run Ethernet cables up and down their house, which I don't know too many people doing that nowadays. But it is interesting that a lot of people have not prioritized in making this easier.
And I just think that there's a lot of stuff going on here that, again, people listening to this like whatever, what's the difference? That I think is actually really a big deal. But there's also some future leaning stuff that I think is very interesting, right? That it's going to work with these smart devices. It has the protocols built into it to control things like Nest devices or things that are like Nest devices. And I think that's going to be kind of a big deal for people.
Yeah.
Down the road as well. And we'll see. I'm not suggesting that we all need to buy this thing. I mean, you've seen like that weird, like the D-Link thing looks like a Predator drone, like it rises up out of the steam or something and it's gonna shoot missiles at you. I'm sure that thing gets awesome range and whatever. It's got like antennas all over the place. It's crazy looking. But I think this kind of thing that's kind of emits a soft light. It doesn't have blinking, flashing, baloney going on. It's something you could put with furniture or next to a lamp that no one would really think much about. I'm not 100% a fan of you have to have a mobile app to configure something. I hope there's still like a web interface, but I think that's a friendly approach for people because people have phones and it's going to work with iOS devices. It's going to work with Android devices. And I think that's cool. And
see, you know what I would love to do? I get, people come here all the time and They're like, oh, what's your Wi-Fi password? So I got to sit there and like
Yeah.
say it to them, right? Like I would
Right.
love to get like a little bing on my phone once they connect, and then I could just do approve always or approve just for the day or whatever, time frame I want to do it, and you set them up like that.
Right.
Why isn't everybody doing this? Well, now I guess everybody will have to, right?
I think that, well, this is a lot like Google Fiber, but it's on a really small scale. That hopefully what this will do is inspire the D-Links and whoever else, Netgears of the world to just make things simpler. I know that these companies probably all have little initiatives for this kind of stuff, but I don't know. I still find this stuff very, very confusing. I spent a lot of time on this in France. I mean, and we had moments. They had a 25 megabit connection, which is great, right? We talked about how the uplink was only 1, which is terrible, but that's that's nobody's fault. It's what a lot of ISPs do.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're as a TV, we're kind of hanging out watching TV one night. I hooked the kids on Arrested Development, which I'm really proud of, and they love it.
Great show.
And we watched a couple of episodes of that, and then it was Sunday night, and we tried to watch it. And the first one, it barely started, and then we tried to get to the next episode, and it wouldn't run. It just wouldn't connect. Because Netflix, it's like Friday, Saturday, Sunday night. It's a freaking disaster. And that's not France's fault. It's not, the router's fault or whatever, but it might be interesting if you could, it's probably Netflix's fault really. So maybe there's nothing you can do about it on our end, but it's kind of interesting if you could dedicate bandwidth. In other words, you say like Netflix is a priority, like
Always.
on Saturday night,
Yeah.
And see if that makes a difference.
Forget about the BitTorrent client.
Yes.
By the way, guys, I'm hearing from the chat room. You could do this in Windows 10. You could actually just approve that, connections and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm talking
Sure.
about my phone. Like in a real world, like I got relatives over and they all want to connect to my internet. I just want to be able to just look at my phone and click OK.
By the way, my wife came up to me while we were in France and said, I just want to get a book on my Kindle. What do I have to do? She couldn't figure it out. She couldn't get it connected, That's just normal need, shouldn't be a problem. And it was just kind of a goofy, crappy router from, 10 years ago or 8 years ago, however old it was.
Was it a Linksys WRT54G?
No. It wasn't one of the classics. No, it was like an old Netgear thing.
It's interesting. I think a lot of the hoopla with these devices has kind of settled because every internet provider now is supplying you with a router.
But most of them are crappy.
And they're
like
crappy.
The Fios one I just got is pretty good. I just looked it up while we were talking. It is only N, right? It's not
It's
like
N.
an ACN, but it's dual band. It has like a guest network if you want to enable that.
There
it's
is,
kind of
yeah.
neat. It does have these capabilities. I mean, I think.
Are you back with
it's
Verizon?
Yeah. So we had done. We were on Fios for a long, long time.
This is
We
a
went to
revelation.
Comcast.
I had no idea you came back.
Oh no, we must have talked about this.
No.
Some months ago. Yeah. No, I'm on Verizon again, and it's the newer Verizon router, which is that kind of wedge shaped one, the really thin one. It's nice. It's definitely improved, but it's not. It's still. You're almost never gonna get. The same quality, the same technology, the same whatever that you're going to get from a third-party device.
What amazes me is that there are times like with the coverage of this router is really interesting because if I'm in the same room, I get almost half my speed, but if I leave and I go like across the hallway and up the stairs, it's perfect, full speed internet. So I'm like, I don't know what this thing is doing. But
I told you, I must have told you this, by the way, when we were in Ireland about a month ago, we went to this castle out in the middle of nowhere. And of course, a lot of times when you're in the west of Ireland, the internet connection is really garbage. And so my phone said it had an E connection with like an edge connection, 2G. And you walk up into the castle, I'm taking pictures on my phone and everything. And then I noticed at some point it said 3G, like on the second floor. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty good, and I could actually like post something to Facebook from here. And then I walked up to the third floor and it said H, which is like HSPA, which is kind of 3.5G, like a little bit better than 3G. I'm like, oh, that's great. That's as good as I could expect. And then I walked outside and it was It said LTE. And like I literally at every level of the castle, like my connection
You
went
went
up.
through every generation.
Yeah, no, like seriously, in one
wireless
castle.
internet. That's
I
amazing.
showed my kid. I'm like, look at this phone, like it's going up.
What's amazing is that in the subways now in New York, there's 4G access now. So
because they put in that,
and it never existed,
That's the
and now
best.
like I'm in the subway. It's so awesome because
because you used to go on the subway and it was like a dead zone.
yeah, now there's 4G. I mean, full bars. I'm getting better service in the subway than I do at my house. So that says something.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a homeless man urinating next to me, but at least I have all 4
LTE
bars.
makes a difference.
Yeah, it kind of makes the
I
experience
would
a little
take the
better.
urine if I could get good internet speed.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, well, don't get me started on how crappy the city is getting here. It's become an awful place at certain times of the day. So the Apple, since we're on this like home theater thing, when watching Netflix and stuff like that, the rumors are heating up again, Paul. It's September, so it's time to talk about an Apple TV.
I
hope.
Do you think that's the big news for September?
You know what? I hope they don't release one.
Wow.
Now I'm just hoping we don't get an Apple TV.
You know what? This is where they're at. Apple TV is getting long in the tooth, as they say. I don't know where that phrase comes from, but it's sort of like the iPod Touch, right? Which, by the way, I tried to use. I keep talking about this trip for some reason, but I tried to use Apple Music on this iPod Touch, the previous gen now, the one that was in market for like 3 years, and it is absolutely unusable. It is so slow. And I think, if you look at the new Apple iPod Touch, they took away the little loop connector or whatever. They have some new colors. But basically, this is just the same exact device with a faster processor. And I bet, I'm not going to buy one, but I bet it makes all the difference in the world. And I think they need to do that with the Apple TV. At the very least, like, you don't have to change the hockey puck. You don't have to add a power button. You don't have to change the remote, although they might fix some of that stuff. Just make it more RAM, a little more storage, faster processor. Because I think as we start pumping more and more information through these devices, I think it becomes the bottleneck. And, Roku has done this. They've done a pretty good job about updating their hardware. Amazon, the Fire TV, those things are really fast. I might have issues around the user experience, but the device itself is really fast.
Yeah.
It makes a difference to make these kind of changes. So I know Apple has bigger designs on like a TV subscription service and blah, 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 whatever. But I mean, honestly, I think for now, just God, replace the damn puck.
You know what? I don't want them to replace it. Now I wanted to say the same. It's like it's because all these years I've been hoping for one. And it is getting a little long in the tooth, like you said, and it's a little, sluggish compared to other boxes. I'm a big fan of the Fire TV. I absolutely love this thing.
Yeah.
The things I have done so much to my Fire TV. I mean, the speed is unbelievable, but I've sideloaded Kodi on the thing. I put Chrome on there. I watch
because it's a Google.
Because it's Android. Yeah. So I'm running
by the
all
way,
these Android apps.
I have bought but not used much the Google Nexus Play device, or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And I wonder how that's going to compare. I don't think it's out there yet. I probably put it away for the home swap. I got to get that going. But that is interesting for kind of the same reason. It's more of a pure Android type device. It's from Google. So assuming they don't just move on to the 7th generation attempt at getting Android TV to work, it might be around for a little while. It might be updated or whatever. But I do like the idea of this kind of thing,
Yeah, I do too.
But you got to have. I've got so much content on the Apple thing.
I'm obviously they're waiting for the deals with the big networks.
Yeah,
that's going to be the big selling point here.
But I think they're still going to announce it. I think they've waited so long that even though the content deals aren't in place, I think they're still going to do the hardware.
It's about time.
Just to have something in the market for Christmas or whatever.
So if we were to guess right now, right? If you were to take a guess, do you think they're going to open up the App Store for more than just, the hand-picked applications that are on there right now?
For Apple TV, you mean?
Yeah, for Apple TV, yeah.
Yeah, I believe there's been evidence of this for a long time. I do think they're going to do that. I don't, it's sort of like the Apple Watch. I don't think it's the next big thing. But I think when you're making apps for iOS, as so many people are, especially if they're entertainment apps or apps that would lend themselves to that kind of presentation on a TV, it's so obvious. I mean, it's for the same reason that Microsoft needs to, sooner rather than later, open up the Xbox store to app developers on Windows 10 or whatever, so they can do the same thing. I mean, it's not going it's not going to be as big as the primary platform, but it's such an obvious and wonderful thing to give developers, and it would be an obvious and wonderful thing for users of the platform as well, because their apps come over with them. I think I can't believe this hasn't happened.
Yeah, it's interesting to me how they've held on to this for this long, and obviously, if they thought
Do you
they
think
would
it's tied to the content guys? I mean,
I don't
do you
think so.
there's
No, I think it's them. For Apple, they do certain things that it's for profit, right? The reason why they're doing things is so they can make money, and then they have like a podcast division that they make no money off of. But it's there. It's become their platforms. That's the number one platform for podcasts. I think with devices like this for the Apple TV, they are the way that they probably see it is: are we going to sell more Apple TVs if we open this up? If we open up the App Store and we have to maintain the store, because they're not going to let every app through. It's not going to be like how it is for the phone. It's
but they don't let every app through on the iPhone either. I mean, I realize there are a lot of apps, but I mean, all you have, it's not hard to say, look, this is very stringent. I mean, the majority of iOS apps are probably games, right? And if they want to put games on a TV, which by the way, I think is a wonderful idea, those would have to be tailored to whatever the control will be. I mean, do you use like an iOS touch device so they can have a hand controller of some kind, like Amazon offers? I think Google offers.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know what the right answer for this is. The last couple of years, you and I are both really into this, and Tom Merritt and Brian Brushwood, they do a show called Court Killers, and it's all about set-top boxes and devices and television shows that are exclusive for online platform. Which I, by the way, guys, if you are into that stuff, definitely check out the show because it's one of my favorite shows to listen to. Has the market matured beyond Apple TV, needing to do a set-top box? 3-4 years ago, not every TV was a smart TV. Now, most TVs are smart TVs, and the average person buying a TV is not saying, "Oh my God, this thing has Netflix, but hell with this. I need to go get an Apple TV." No,
but you know what?
Now.
They're closing in on 1 billion users who have App Store, iTunes accounts. They have their own content that needs to get onto a TV somehow, right? So there's always going to be a need for this, but they have this opportunity to lock people into their ecosystem, which they love to do, while providing them with additional value, which they also love to do, to be fair, and can work with content providers to get unique deals that I think they will do. And I think they're uniquely poised to kind of offer the ultimate cord-cutting solution. It's just that it hasn't come together yet. Apple has to be very careful, since the ebook thing, not to collude with other companies to hurt other companies, right? And this was never confirmed, but the EU apparently looked at their dealings with the music industry, fearing they were doing the same kind of stuff they did with ebooks, and apparently, this is not been confirmed, but apparently didn't find any bad behavior. And so perhaps they've learned their lesson. One of the reasons this might be taking so long is they're trying to work within the rules for a change. But that just means we're going to get something that works well.
Yeah.
Whenever it happens.
It's fascinating to me. I mean, a lot of this is fascinating. September, October is going to be a very, very hot 2 months for hardware. I mean, we got the software releases, right? We got Windows 10 here. I got a great software update on my Samsung Galaxy S6. I got Android 5.1.1. Wow. And guess what, Paul? My battery no longer just dies overnight.
So it's not like a 70 station wagon going up a hill.
Yeah. You could actually see.
You can actually watch
gasoline.
it in real time go down.
Yeah. I'm actually charging. This is insane how I'm charging this phone right now. I'm charging it with this backup battery because I don't have an outlet here. But I was getting overnight on standby. I was losing about 15%, 15 to 20%.
Wow. Before
this update, I got this update. I was at 41%, and in the morning I was at 38%. So that kind of makes sense, right? Just letting it sit there.
Yeah.
So they kind of fixed some of these issues. So that was my happy software update. But we got Windows 10. October, the next, I guess, wave for Windows 10 is coming out. Also, Microsoft will be announcing a ton of hardware.
Yeah. So you're referring to this new report.
Yes.
I had heard about all of this stuff, and I think I've been talking about it.
You have.
I have this on. I mean, again, things could have changed since I talked to this person, but I have this on the highest authority possible at Microsoft, that they were planning a September event for the phones in New York City, and that the Surface event would be separate from that, and that Band and Surface would be announced in October. And I don't know where. I mean, I think there was some talk about possibly Surface being at Redmond, but I don't know that for a fact. And so this week, there's been a report from somewhere that this is all happening together at one event in October. And actually, that would be kind of cool. It'd be kind of nice not to have to travel to multiple events or whatever. So we'll see. But it contradicts what I had been told. So that tells me either it's wrong or things have changed. And so I'm trying to figure that out. But yeah, a lot of new stuff is coming.
A lot. It's so I don't know if you could talk about some of the hardware, but obviously the speculation is Surface Pro 4.
Yep.
The new flagship phone devices.
Yep.
For whatever that may be. And there was something else. Oh, the Band.
Band.
Microsoft
Band.
The Microsoft Band 2. And was that it?
That's all I know about. And I think that was all that was mentioned in that report.
Yeah.
Having one event, it would be smart for them because it would be kind of a big bang thing. Although I'll say on the flip side, if you do separate events, you get more news coverage, right? Because something like Band would get lost if it was announced alongside Surface Pro 4 and new Lumia phones.
Sure.
Although, by the way, the Band team may want to get lost because they've really been working on this kind of soft launch approach, and they may not want to go big bang. But
you know what's interesting, though? That they are going with a second Band, and I'm curious about what they're going to change with that one, because the first one was pretty decent, but it wasn't, you could tell that it was a first-gen device. With the Surface 4, though, I'm curious, because I would imagine that they are going to change, the kind of the look on this device, because it's looked the same for the last 2 generations.
Well, no. So Surface, for the Pro device, it's only been 1 gen. So Surface Pro 3 was a new device. Surface 3 is kind of visually styled like Surface Pro 3, but it's a non-Pro device. They made promises last October. No, actually, it might have been last August. So a year ago, where they said, look, we want businesses to roll this out. They're looking for a certain kind of consistency across generations, because when they deploy hardware, they need to know this stuff's going to work. And they pledged at the time that all of the major peripherals for the Surface Pro 3, including the docking station, which conforms to the exact size and shape of Surface Pro 3, would be compatible with the next Pro device.
Yeah.
And that tells me that either the next Pro device will be identical from a form factor perspective, or hopefully not. They'll slip some kind of baloney slider in there so that it can fit in the Surface
A baloney slider.
Well, not an actual baloney slider.
I would love a baloney slider just slipped inside of the Surface.
I apologize for that word choice.
Yeah.
So my bet is that Surface Pro 4 will be identical form factor to Surface Pro 3. It will obviously have updated chipset, graphics and all that.
Yeah.
It will, and then you have to kind of speculate from there. So it's a Windows 10 device. So I believe and hope that it will have some form of like Windows Hello compatible something.
It would have to.
Camera, it has to, right?
It would have.
I assume they're going to improve the keyboards again. Hopefully, offer an actual hardware keyboard this time. Finally, hopefully they'll have 2 USB ports on it. Although honestly, I don't really expect that. But I think it's going to conform to what we see with Surface Pro 3. I think it's going to be the same basic deal.
I'm curious to see how it performs. I mean, this is going to be their. Well, it's interesting. This is going to be the flagship, I guess, model as to what to do with Windows 10 on hardware, right? That should be the device for them. This is the example that they need to set for everybody. So I'm curious on what extras they're putting into this one.
I mean, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for them to be on the leading edge of hardware, which they've not done. So each of the previous generation Surface Pro devices was kind of the previous gen Intel chipset at the time, and it's always been a little strange how they've done that. And so now we've got this new generation chipset finally coming out right now.
Skylark.
Skylake.
Skylake. I don't know why.
Skylark. The Buick Skylark.
Yeah, the Buick Skylark.
One of the more underrated small cars from the early 1980s. Actually, one of my first cars was a Buick Skylark, but it was a 76 Buick Skylark. Anyway, I think this is their opportunity to kind of push the boundaries of being on the leading edge a little bit, which it's because they haven't been. So
Yeah.
I think that alone will be pretty cool. And they'll talk percentages. It's going to get X percentage better battery life. It's going to get X percentage better performance.
Yeah, because
X percentage better graphics.
Skylake itself, the graphics within Skylake, I saw this demo that they were doing. It's much better over the previous generation. I mean, supporting up to 3 4K monitors, and it's a much beefier integration with the graphics on this thing.
They also got to do work on the thermal thing on Surface Pro 3 is very interesting, but in my experience, Surface Pro 3, the fan can blow very loud and very frequently, and hopefully the new chipset will kind of calm that effect down. Plus, I'm sure there'll be some more hardware rev on the design of the fans and the outtakes and all that stuff.
It's interesting. Battery life would be fascinating to see what they're going to be able to get with Windows 10, because this device is set up for Windows 10. Also,
this is one of those cross your finger moments, because this one's going to right. If they come out the door with like 5-6 hours of battery life, it's going to be like, all right, well.
Well, the Sony Vaio story was interesting too, because they're known for making higher end laptops, and it was just too pricey, and it didn't really catch on. But this may be something that's worth looking, considering it's going to be part of the Signature series.
Yeah, so they're coming to the U.S. with just one device originally, although I guess laptops are coming in the future as well. It's super expensive, by the way. I don't know if you saw this. It's like $2,200.
Yeah, but what's the model? Do you have it? I'm looking at some of the older ones.
I do have. Yeah, I wrote a story about it on the Petri site. It's not on Thurrott.com, but it's a.
You go to Petri.com. I saw it on there. I couldn't because I was looking at just Sony Vaio prices to see if it's still insanely expensive. And it's still insanely expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it's very expensive. It's a what is this thing called? It's called a Z Canvas. Sorry, it's a lot like a Surface Pro device. It has a pen. It has a hardware type keyboard, which I prefer. Instead of like a floppy kind of type cover kind of thing. But the company Vaio is targeting high end professionals. Graphic artists, architects. People that. Want quality, and they can make a good profit on these things and not have to kind of speak to that volume market that Sony was going after previously. And so we'll see. We'll see if it takes off. But they're starting to expand out of Japan again, and that's kind of neat. And I am very eager to. I've asked, and I'll see if I can get a review copy of this thing. I certainly am not going to buy one of these. It's so expensive, but I am very interested in seeing what it's all about. It looks good.
$22.99 for the convertible tablet. Yeah. It's a convertible tablet. Yeah, it is expensive. A lot. I can't. The next couple of months is going to be pretty exciting, Paul. We're gonna shift our attention to hardware now. We spoke about software since God knows for how long, and now we're finally getting some hardware that we're very excited about. Also, El Capitan is coming, so let's all prepare for this.
Well, Windows 10.
Well, you know what I am. You know what I am. I am hopeful for the promise that it was 400 times faster.
Right. 410 new features.
Yeah, well,
feature 1, this font in this size.
No. It was 400 times faster than the previous version. Sure. So
every time you see a claim like that, don't you wonder?
You know what? It's not a misquote. I'm telling you right now, this thing better be 400 times faster than the previous version.
400 times faster on the same hardware.
So
will it work on a Core 2 Duo? That's all I need to know.
Yeah, can I run this on my 2008 Mac? Just my MacBook? Yeah. Will it work?
I actually put El Capitan on my MacBook Air. And
I heard about your update debacle. You played the update game for a couple hours.
And then I did it again. Oh, no, I shouldn't say that. I didn't have to do it again. When I did it the second time, I wiped out the machine. It was funny. Apple does a really good job with PC restore stuff, and Microsoft could learn from this. But when you install the newer versions of the OS, that becomes the restore partition, and so you can restore off of that. And that actually didn't work for me one time, in the sense that it wouldn't take my Apple ID, which I was typing in correctly. So I blew the whole thing away. It went back to Mavericks, and then I had to update from that to Yosemite. And then from Yosemite to El Capitan. And when I did that, I went right to Beta 7, so I didn't have to do all the installs.
And El Capitan is a good operating system.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say that I don't use the Mac a lot, but I will say visually, there's actually a very big change when you go from Mavericks to Yosemite. And when you go from Yosemite to El Capitan, there isn't a big visual change. But the big change is actually from Mavericks, which to me sounds like a very recent new version of Mac OS X.
Yeah.
It's not that old, right? It's only
Mavericks?
like
A
year
year.
and a half,
Yeah, a
less
year.
than 2 years.
No, a year. Every year.
Well,
they come out.
Yosemite's a year, right? I mean,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, Yosemite is a year.
Yeah.
Mavericks is 2 years. Yeah. I am very excited for this. I'm very excited for the new font. It is time for me to get a new laptop, and I think my next laptop is not going to be a Mac. Unfortunately.
Wow.
I'm going to go with a Windows-based
The
laptop.
Sony Z Kansas.
I'm going to go with the Kansas and the Intel Skylark.
The Intel Skylark.
How much to get the Kansas edition on my Intel Skylark? It's like the special leather package. It's like the
Eddie Bauer edition
Yeah,
you could get on the Ford Explorer.
All right, guys. That's it for this week. Guys, this is what we're going to do. If you're watching live, stay tuned. What the Talk is coming up. What is What the Talk? Well, What the Talk is our bonus show. We recorded live each and every week following the show exclusively for patreon.com/whatthetech. You could donate anything you want, $1, $2, a penny, 2 pennies, whatever it is. We take. Helps us keep on, doing this. It's going to pay for this live stream. I'll tell you that thing is going to be a little pricey, but I think it's worth it. I think you guys deserve an ad-free live stream, and we're going to be providing that. So things like that go to the extras that we're going to be offering. Also, if you're buying anything on Amazon, you could use my link. It's gfq.co/Amazon. Bookmark it, save it, and whenever you go to Amazon, click on that, and I get a tiny little credit from every time you make a purchase. It's a couple percent here and there, and it goes a long way. You can follow Paul on Twitter @TheRot. You can follow me @AndrewZarian. Paul also does another podcast called Windows Weekly on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. East on the Twit Network with Mary Jo Foley and Leo Laporte. Phenomenal show, great show, one of my favorites of all time. You are one of my favorites of all time, Paul.
Thanks, man.
All time. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye for now.